They dragged her through the dust by horse. Then one Lakota stood in the road. The sun beat down on the red plains of Red Mesa, painting everything in shades of fire and dust. Small rocks and sand swirled in the hot wind, making the horizon shimmer like a mirage. In this harsh frontier world, life was hard. Settlers built their homes from metal scraps and stone, and every traveler knew danger could appear at any moment. A small caravan moved slowly across the plains. Horses trotted carefully, their hooves kicking up clouds of fine red dust. The settlers rode in pairs, guarding the wagons that carried food, water, and supplies. Among them was Lena, a young woman with dark hair tied back in a simple braid. Her eyes scanned the horizon, always alert. She had traveled these lands before but had never felt completely safe. The desert of Red Mesa was unforgiving, and humans were not always the most trustworthy. Suddenly, from the cliffs above, a shadow appeared. Lena squinted. Three riders emerged, moving fast and silent like predators. Their black coats flapped in the wind, and strange weapons glinted in the sunlight. Lena felt her heart tighten. They were mercenaries, known in the settlements for taking anything they wanted and harming anyone who resisted. Before anyone could react, the mercenaries charged down onto the caravan. Horses neighed loudly as dust erupted around them. Shouts rang out. One of the settlers tried to defend the wagons with a blaster, but the attackers were too quick. They moved like shadows, disarming the guards with swift, precise blows. Lena felt herself grabbed from behind. Strong hands held her tight, and before she could struggle, she was lifted onto a horse. The wind whipped against her face as the mercenary's horse galloped away. She could hear her friends shouting behind her, but the sound was swallowed by the desert. Lena tried to free herself, but the ropes they tied around her wrists were tight. Her horse's hooves struck the hard ground, kicking up dust into her eyes. She blinked and coughed, tasting the grit in her mouth. Far above the plains, on a high mesa, a lone rider watched the scene unfold. His eyes narrowed, scanning the chaos below. This was Lakota, a Lakota-inspired space ranger who had long hair tied back with a leather cord and a sharp, thoughtful expression. His long coat caught the wind as he guided his horse along the cliff's edge. He had heard rumors of trouble near Red Mesa's main outpost, and his instincts had not failed him. Lakota's hand rested on the hilt of his blaster. He did not rush. He did not shout. He simply observed. The mercenaries had taken one of the settlers. He could see the young woman struggling in their grasp. He recognized the way they moved, trained, ruthless, and dangerous. But he had faced men like them before. He would not allow another person to suffer if he could stop it. Lena's heart pounded. The mercenaries spoke in low, cruel voices, laughing as they urged their horses forward. She tried to keep her balance, holding onto the rope tied to the saddle, but the horse was fast, and the desert seemed endless. She thought of her family and friends back at the outpost. Would she ever see them again? The fear was sharp, stabbing, but in the corner of her mind she saw a glimmer of hope. Someone was watching. Lakota spurred his horse down a narrow path along the cliff, moving with precision and control. Dust and pebbles fell from the cliffside as he descended, keeping his eyes on the mercenaries. He had faced the desert's dangers many times, falling rocks, hidden canyons, and creatures that prowled at night. Yet nothing tested him more than humans who had lost their sense of right and wrong. The mercenaries reached a dry riverbed, the horse's hooves pounding against cracked earth. Lena struggled, twisting against the ropes, but the more she moved, the tighter the rope seemed to become. One of the men glanced at her, sneering. "Quiet, girl." "You don't want to get hurt," he said, but his voice was more cruel than threatening. Lena felt a surge of anger. She would not give them the satisfaction of fear. Lakota was closer now, moving through the dust like a shadow. He could see Lena's dark hair blowing in the wind, the ropes binding her hands, and the desperation in her eyes. His jaw tightened. He had no plan to negotiate. Violence might come, yes, but only if it was necessary. His people had taught him patience, strategy, and respect for life. He would not let this young woman be dragged to suffering while he could act. The mercenaries turned a corner, leading Lena toward a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on either side, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Lakota slowed slightly, calculating. The canyon could trap the mercenaries, giving him an advantage. He signaled to his horse, moving carefully, using every shadow and ridge to stay hidden. Lena felt the horse stumble over a rock. She screamed, fearing they might fall, but the mercenary held her firmly. The canyon walls loomed, red and jagged. She tried to see beyond them, but only saw dust and sky. She wanted to shout for help, but her voice caught in her throat. Then a small movement at the cliff's edge caught her eye, a lone figure riding down, determined, steady. Lakota rode closer. His presence was quiet but strong. He did not rush blindly into the canyon. He needed the right moment. The mercenaries were skilled, but their greed made them reckless. One mistake, one misstep, and he could act. Lena felt her hope grow. Someone had come for her. The leader of the mercenaries glanced up briefly. His eyes narrowed at Lakota, but he said nothing. He knew something was different about this rider. The others laughed, unaware of the watchful eyes above. Lakota's hand hovered near his blaster, but he did not draw it yet. He wanted the right timing, the perfect moment to stop the danger without unnecessary harm. Lena's mind raced. She thought of the outpost, the families waiting for news, and the harsh desert that seemed endless. She also thought of the strange feeling that courage could appear even in the most terrifying moments. Seeing Lakota gave her strength. She shifted slightly, preparing herself to act if she could, following his example. The canyon entrance was wide, the walls casting deep shadows. Dust swirled around Lakota as he rode down from the cliffs, using the terrain to hide his movements. Lena could see his silhouette against the red light of the setting sun. He seemed almost larger than life, a lone figure standing against the wind, the dust, and the cruelty of the mercenaries. As the mercenaries led Lena deeper into the canyon, Lakota's plan became clear. He would not let them escape with her. He calculated distances, obstacles, and timing. He knew the canyon could be both a trap and an advantage. He whispered to his horse, guiding it silently as he prepared to intervene at the right moment. Lena's fear remained, but it was joined by a growing sense of hope. She could not speak, but her eyes followed Lakota's movements. He was careful, precise, and brave. She realized that courage could exist even in the dust and danger of Red Mesa. The canyon walls rose higher, narrowing the path. The dust thickened. The mercenaries did not see Lakota approaching from the cliffside paths. One misstep by them, one moment of distraction, and he could change the outcome. Lena's heart raced, and she gripped the rope tied to her wrists, preparing for whatever might come. Lakota's mind was focused, sharp, and calm. He knew the desert, the horses, and the mercenaries' weaknesses. He rode with the wind at his back, dust swirling around his boots, every movement measured. He would protect Lena, and he would do so with skill and courage. The plains of Red Mesa had seen many battles, but this was different. This was about saving a life, about stopping cruelty before it could continue. The wind carried the sound of hooves and shouts, mixing with the cries of dust across the canyon. Lena felt her chest tighten, a mix of fear and hope. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: she was not alone. Someone had come. Someone was ready to stand in the path of danger. And in that moment, high on the cliffs, Lakota rode with purpose, his eyes fixed on the mercenaries, his mind ready for the fight that would decide Lena's fate. The red dust of Red Mesa swirled around them all, carrying the tension, the danger, and the possibility of hope. The canyon walls rose high around them, narrowing the path and trapping the wind in sharp gusts that carried dust into every crevice. Lena's heart pounded in her chest as the mercenaries urged their horses faster, hoping to escape the figure who had appeared on the cliffs. Her hands were still bound, but her eyes stayed fixed on the lone rider approaching, Lakota. He was steady, his horse moving with quiet strength like a shadow blending with the red dust. The leader of the mercenaries, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, turned his head. "Do you see him?" he growled. His voice was low but sharp. "The ranger, he's following us." The others laughed, but the humor was false. They had fought many settlers and travelers, but something about Lakota unsettled them. His movements were deliberate, his presence unyielding, as if the desert itself had sent him to block their path. Lena tried to shift on her horse, testing the ropes. Her wrists ached, but she did not scream. She needed to stay alert. Fear was heavy, but there was a glimmer of hope now. The shadowy figure behind them was not just a man, he was a protector. The mercenaries entered a wider part of the canyon where the sun broke through the walls, casting sharp shadows across the ground. Lakota slowed, blending with the rocks, and watched. He knew he could not charge recklessly. The canyon had traps, both natural and man-made. Rocks jutted out at dangerous angles, and the mercenaries could use them to their advantage. He waited for the right moment. The leader pointed ahead. We'll lose him if we reach the bend. Hold tight, girl. He won't catch us. His words were cruel, meant to scare Lena, but they had the opposite effect. Lena's fear sharpened into determination. She had to find a way to help herself, even if it was small. She began to study the canyon walls, noticing narrow ledges, hidden rocks, and shadows that might give her a chance if she acted. Lakota watched every movement. He noticed the mercenary leader glance back too often, breaking his rhythm. That was the first mistake. The second was his overconfidence. Lakota whispered to his horse, guiding it silently along a hidden path. From his position above, he could see every step the mercenaries made. Then came the moment. One of the mercenaries' horses stumbled on a loose rock, sending the rider forward. The ropes around Lena tightened as she shifted, nearly losing her balance. Lakota seized the chance. He shouted, a clear, commanding voice that echoed through the canyon. Stop! The mercenaries turned, surprised. Dust swirled in the air, making Lakota's figure seem larger, almost spectral. His hand hovered over the blaster at his side, but his posture was calm. He did not aim yet. He wanted them to see the choice, surrender or face consequences. The leader spat to the side, frustration flashing across his scarred face. We don't stop for anyone, he yelled, but Lakota did not move hastily. He waited. The canyon amplified every sound, the horse's hooves, the wind, and the rough voices. The tension wrapped around Lena like the red dust itself. She realized something. Lakota was not just strong, he was patient. He had trained his whole life for moments like this. He did not need to rush. Every movement was precise, every choice mattered. Lena felt her fear change into admiration, then courage. She could act too. The canyon bend approached, the walls narrowing so tight that only a single horse could pass at a time. Lakota saw the perfect moment. If he could block the path at the bend, the mercenaries would be trapped. His horse moved silently over the rocks, following a hidden trail that gave him the high ground. Lena's horse slowed slightly as the terrain became tricky. One mercenary glanced at her. Keep moving, he growled, but Lena had an idea. She shifted, using her weight to nudge the horse toward a narrow ledge on the side. The horse stumbled slightly but regained balance. She had bought time, and Lakota noticed. A small nod of approval came from him. She was no longer just a victim, she was part of the plan. The leader cursed as he saw Lakota on the cliff above, his shadow falling across the canyon floor. We can't outrun him, he muttered, but he did not slow. Pride and greed pushed him forward. That would be his mistake. Lakota jumped down from a small ledge onto a rock platform, landing with the grace of someone who had trained for years in both desert survival and combat. His boots kicked up dust as he stood, facing the mercenaries. He did not shout. He did not make sudden movements. He simply stood, the red sun casting his shadow long across the canyon floor. The first mercenary tried to swing his weapon, but Lakota was faster. A quick motion, a push of the wrist, and the weapon flew out of the man's hands. Another mercenary lunged, and Lakota sidestepped, using his body weight to throw the attacker into a pile of rocks. The dust rose around them, mixing with the tension and the sound of struggling horses. Lena watched, holding her breath. She could see now that Lakota's skill was not just in weapons. It was in his calm, in the way he used his environment, in the way he calculated every move. She felt a surge of courage. If he could stand against them, maybe she could too. The mercenary leader drew a plasma whip, a crackling weapon that arced with energy. He swung it toward Lakota, who ducked just in time. Sparks flew as the whip struck a rock, sending fragments into the air. Lakota's blaster was ready now, aimed carefully. He fired a warning shot that struck the canyon wall near the leader, sending a small cloud of dust and forcing him to step back. Leave her, Lakota shouted, his voice echoing off the rocks. This ends now, the leader hesitated, pride fought with fear. He looked at Lena, then at Lakota, then at the narrow canyon walls that limited his escape. For the first time, he realized he might not win. The canyon, once their advantage, had become a trap. Lena's courage grew. She twisted slightly in her ropes, grabbing a rock nearby. She aimed carefully, ready to act if Lakota needed her. She was no longer just a passenger. The mercenaries were facing a force they had not expected, a determined protector and a young woman ready to fight for her freedom. Lakota moved forward, keeping himself between Lena and the mercenaries. His movements were smooth, precise. He disarmed another attacker, using a combination of physical skill and his blaster. Dust swirled around him, and Lena could barely keep track of the action. She felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The canyon walls trapped the sound, making every shout, every footstep, every weapon strike louder. Lakota knew he had to end this quickly. He guided his horse closer to Lena, signaling her to stay calm. The leader made one final attempt to charge, but Lakota anticipated it. With a quick sidestep and a low sweep of his leg, he knocked the weapon out of the man's hand. The mercenary fell, scrambling back as Lakota stood tall. The other men looked around, fear replacing their earlier arrogance. They realized the fight was lost. Lakota's calm determination, combined with the canyon's natural advantage, had trapped them. Lena's heart raced, but she felt a sense of relief. The immediate danger was over, but the desert was not yet safe. Lakota approached her carefully, his eyes scanning for any further threats. He untied the ropes from her wrists, his hands steady and gentle. "You're safe now," he said simply. Lena blinked, still catching her breath. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but full of gratitude. Lakota nodded. "We are not finished. The desert has more dangers. We must move carefully." Together, they moved through the canyon, Lakota leading and Lena following. The dust settled slightly as the sun sank lower in the sky, painting the canyon walls with long shadows. Lena's fear remained but had transformed into cautious courage. She had seen strength, skill, and determination in the desert that day, and it had given her hope. The canyon was quiet now, the mercenaries defeated or trapped. Lakota did not celebrate. His people had taught him that victory in the desert was only temporary. There was always another challenge, another danger, another life to protect. Lena understood. This was a place where courage mattered, and where the smallest act could change the outcome of life and death. As the red sun touched the horizon, Lakota and Lena emerged from the canyon onto a small plateau. The wind carried the dust away, revealing the vast plains of Red Mesa. The outpost was still far ahead, but for the first time, Lena felt that reaching it was possible. With Lakota at her side, she believed in hope, in courage, and in the possibility of survival. The desert was harsh, the plains wide, and the horizon uncertain. But in that moment, the young woman and the Lakota ranger rode forward, together against the dust, the danger, and the mercenaries who had dared to take her. The canyon had tested them, and they had survived. But Red Mesa held more challenges, and the desert winds whispered of dangers yet to come. The sun had almost disappeared behind the jagged cliffs of Red Mesa, leaving streaks of red and orange across the sky. The desert grew colder as shadows stretched long across the plains. Lena's arms ached from the ropes that had held her only hours before, but she rode alongside Lakota with a new sense of purpose. The immediate danger of the mercenaries was over, but the desert was still unpredictable, and Lakota knew the gang might regroup. "Are you ready?" Lakota asked, his voice calm but firm. His eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and focused. Lena nodded. She was frightened, yes, but she had learned quickly that panic would not help. Survival here required patience, courage, and observation. The canyon behind them opened into a vast, uneven plain. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground, and in some places, strange alien plants rose like small towers, glowing faintly in the twilight. These plains were unfamiliar to most settlers. Only those who traveled often, like Lakota, knew the hidden paths and dangers. Lena's horse stumbled over a small mound, and she almost lost her balance. Lakota slowed, his hand reaching out briefly to steady her. "Careful," he said. "The desert is quiet, but quiet is dangerous." They rode in silence, the only sound the pounding of horse hooves and the soft wind whistling through the rocks. Lena thought about the mercenaries they had left behind. Were they truly defeated, or would they come back with reinforcements? The thought made her stomach tighten, but she forced herself to focus on the path ahead. Suddenly, from a ridge above, a low hum filled the air. Lena's eyes widened. "What is that?" she whispered. Lakota's head turned sharply, his eyes narrowed. From the shadows of the ridge, strange vehicles appeared, hover horses, fast and sleek, designed to glide over the desert floor. The mercenaries had not given up. They were returning, and they had brought reinforcements. Lakota shifted in the saddle. His mind raced. The canyon had given him an advantage before, but here in the open plains, the mercenaries had the speed. Lena's heart thumped against her chest. She clutched the reins tightly, gripping the horse for balance. "They are fast," Lakota said, "but we can use the terrain. Watch the rocks and plants. They can block them or slow them down." The mercenaries' leader, the man with the scarred face, waved from the lead hover horse. "Thought you could escape us, Ranger?" he shouted. "We're not finished." Lena felt a chill run down her spine, but she did not show it. She had seen Takoda face danger before, and she knew he would not back down. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Takoda's horse moved closer to the rocks and alien plants. He pointed to a narrow passage between two large rock formations. "We go there," he said. "It's tight. They cannot follow easily. Keep close and stay calm." Lena's horse obeyed, following Takoda into the passage. The walls were high, casting shadows that hid them from the approaching mercenaries. The hover horses flew over the open plain, but they could not fit through the narrow rocks. Takoda had used the desert's natural traps before, and now it worked in their favor. The mercenaries slowed, trying to maneuver their vehicles, but the terrain blocked them. One hover horse clipped a rock, skidding slightly before regaining balance. The leader cursed loudly. Lena felt a spark of relief, but knew it was only temporary. As they moved deeper into the rocks, Takoda glanced back. "We are not safe yet," he said. "They may find another path. Stay alert." The narrow passage twisted and turned. Lena's heart pounded as they passed strange, glowing plants. Their light made the shadows dance, creating illusions that confused the eyes. She had to focus on her horse, on Takoda's movements, and on the sound of the approaching danger. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A low, rumbling sound grew louder. Lena's horse reared slightly, and she nearly lost her balance. Takoda did not flinch. His eyes scanned the canyon floor. The mercenaries had set small explosives, designed to block their escape or harm them. Takoda leaped off his horse with precise timing, landing beside Lena. He grabbed her reins and steadied her. "Hold on tight," he shouted. A small explosion rocked the rocks nearby, sending dust into the air. Lena's heart raced, but she did as he instructed, gripping the reins and following his lead. They moved quickly, weaving through the narrow paths. Takoda's knowledge of the desert was unmatched. He knew which rocks were safe, which ledges could support their horses, and which paths could hide them from sight. Lena marveled at his skill and courage. After a tense few minutes, the passage opened into a wide plateau. The wind was strong here, carrying dust and the faint hum of the mercenaries, hover horses in the distance. Lena could see the open desert stretching far beyond. Takoda slowed, letting the horses catch their breath. "We have a chance now," he said. "We must act fast. They will come around the rocks, and we need to be ready." Lena nodded. She could feel her courage growing. She had survived this far, and she had seen Takoda's strength and skill. She felt ready to help if she could. Takoda dismounted, scanning the horizon. He spotted the mercenaries regrouping. They were trying to find another path, unaware of the obstacles that would slow them down. He whispered instructions to Lena. "Stay behind the rocks, watch their movement. If there is a chance, we can stop them together." The leader of the mercenaries cursed again. "Where are they?" he shouted. "They cannot escape us." Takoda's eyes focused. He saw a narrow ridge above the plateau. If he could lure the mercenaries into the right position, the terrain would work against them. He gestured to Lena, guiding her horse toward a small dip in the ground, out of sight. The mercenaries moved closer, their hover horses making a low hum. Lena held her breath, trying not to move. She could hear their voices, see the shadows of the vehicles, and feel the tension in the air. Takoda took a deep breath, his hands steady. He raised his blaster, aiming carefully. A warning shot rang out, hitting the ground near the lead hover horse. Sparks flew, and the vehicle swerved slightly. Lena saw the mercenary leader glance up, his eyes wide with surprise. "Stop!" Takoda shouted. "Leave her or you will regret it." The leader hesitated. Pride battled with fear. He knew Takoda was skilled, but he was not ready to surrender yet. He motioned for the others to move forward slowly, testing the path. Takoda waited, ready. His plan was simple: use the terrain, his knowledge, and Lena's support to trap them. He did not want unnecessary harm, but he would defend the innocent at any cost. Lena felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She had never seen anything like this desert chase before. The mercenaries moved into the narrow ridge. Takoda's careful positioning meant they could not turn back. Lena could see their panic growing. They realized the canyon, the rocks, and the desert itself were working against them. Takoda signaled to Lena. "Now," he whispered. Lena nodded, understanding immediately. She grabbed a small rock from the ground and threw it toward a narrow ledge, startling a hover horse. The vehicle swerved, giving Takoda the opening he needed. With precise movements, Takoda used his blaster to disable the hover horse's controls. Sparks flew and the vehicles slowed, unable to move as quickly as before. The mercenaries cursed and shouted, realizing they were trapped. Lena felt a surge of courage. She had helped even in a small way. Lakota glanced at her, nodding briefly. She understood they were a team now. The desert, dangerous and unforgiving, had taught them to trust each other. The mercenary leader made one final attempt to charge, but Lakota was ready. He moved with grace, blocking the path and forcing the man to stop. The canyon, the rocks, and Lakota's skill left the mercenaries with no choice. They surrendered, their arrogance replaced with fear and respect. Lena breathed a sigh of relief. The immediate danger was over, but the desert was still vast and unknown. Lakota untied her horse, helping her mount safely. Together they rode forward, leaving the trapped mercenaries behind. The plateau opened into the desert plains, wide and empty. The wind carried the scent of dust and distant plants. Lena looked at Lakota, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. Lakota nodded. "We are not finished," he said. "The desert always has more challenges, but for now you are safe." Lena smiled slightly, feeling a strength she had not known before. She had survived danger, learned courage, and found an ally in Lakota. The plains of Red Mesa stretched ahead, full of unknown paths, hidden dangers, and possibilities. She was ready for whatever came next. The desert wind whispered through the rocks and plains. The red dust settled around them, carrying the tension and hope of survival. Lakota and Lena rode side by side, ready to face the future, together against the challenges of Red Mesa. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows. Darkness would bring new dangers, but it also brought the chance for courage, trust, and strength. Lena knew this was only the beginning. The desert had tested her, but she had survived. And as Lakota guided them forward, she realized that survival was not just about escape. It was about courage, about action, and about standing strong even when the dust swirled around you, and danger seemed endless. The twin suns had almost vanished behind the distant cliffs of Red Mesa, leaving the desert bathed in deep shades of red and gold. Shadows stretched long and sharp across the plains, and the wind carried the faint scent of dust and dry earth. Lena rode beside Lakota, her muscles aching from the long journey, but her spirit stronger than ever. The mercenaries had been slowed, trapped, but their leader had escaped with a small group, and Lakota knew the final confrontation was approaching. Ahead, a high plateau overlooked a vast canyon. It was isolated, perfect for a showdown. Lakota slowed his horse and gestured for Lena to stay close. "We end this here," he said. His voice was calm, steady, but carried authority. Lena nodded, gripping the reins tightly. She was ready, and she knew he was right. The desert had tested them long enough. The mercenary leader appeared first, riding fast along a narrow ridge that led to the plateau. He was flanked by two men on hover horses, each moving carefully, knowing the terrain was no longer in their favor. His scarred face was set in anger, but a hint of fear flickered in his eyes. He had underestimated Lakota, underestimated the desert, and underestimated Lena. Lakota guided his horse to a narrow ledge near the edge of the plateau. From here, he could see every movement of the approaching mercenaries. Lena stayed behind, her horse low to the ground, observing. Lakota had trained her well in the past hours. Patience, observation, and quick action could turn the tide. The leader raised his arm, signaling the others. "Attack together, don't let him stop us." But Lakota was ready. He didn't shout or panic. He knew the plateau, the wind, and the rocks could work to their advantage. He signaled to Lena. "Stay hidden, wait for my mark." She nodded. Her heart pounded, but she trusted him completely. The mercenaries moved onto the plateau. Their hover horses hummed softly, the sound amplified by the canyon below. Lakota's horse shifted slightly, dust kicking up around its hooves. The leader laughed, thinking the plateau would give him speed and advantage. He did not see the hidden rocks, the ledges, or the way Lakota had positioned himself. Lena noticed a narrow crevice in the rock ahead. If used correctly, it could slow the mercenaries' horses. She nudged her horse slightly, kicking loose small stones that tumbled down the crevice. The sound was small, but it would alert Lakota to their exact approach. Lakota moved forward, his boots steady against the plateau's rocky surface. His blaster was ready, but he also carried a long whip, a mix of old-world craftsmanship and future technology. It could disarm, entangle, and stop without causing lethal harm. He preferred skill over destruction, honor over violence. The mercenary leader surged forward, his hoverhorse skimming the rocks. Lakota watched carefully, waiting for the perfect moment. Lena's small act had worked. The stones tumbled at the right time, causing one of the mercenaries to swerve, nearly losing balance. Lakota seized the opportunity. With precise timing, he fired a quick shot at a small boulder near the lead mercenary's path. The boulder shifted, forcing the man to slow. Sparks flew as his hoverhorse scraped against the rocks. The others followed, their formation disrupted. Lena held her breath, gripping the reins, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. Lakota leapt forward, landing between the leader and Lena. His whip lashed out, striking one mercenary's weapon and sending it spinning into the air. The second mercenary tried to charge, but Lakota sidestepped with incredible speed, knocking him off balance and onto the rocky ground. The dust and shadows moved with them, making the scene almost unreal. Lena could see the leader's frustration growing. He shouted, waving his arms wildly. "Stop him, don't let him win!" Lakota remained calm, his eyes locked on the leader. "This ends now," he said. His voice carried across the plateau, calm but commanding. The leader lunged, swinging a plasma whip with deadly precision. Lakota ducked, rolling to the side, and grabbed a small rock from the ground. With a flick of his wrist, he sent it toward the leader's weapon, causing a short circuit. Sparks erupted, and the leader cursed loudly, stepping back in surprise. Lena felt a surge of courage. She realized that even small actions mattered. She nudged her horse forward, positioning herself near a ledge that could block the remaining hoverhorse. She waited for the perfect moment, following Lakota's instructions. The leader tried to charge again, but the plateau's terrain was no longer in his favor. Lakota moved with unmatched skill, using every rock, shadow, and movement to block, disarm, and control the battle. Lena watched, learning, feeling her fear replaced by determination. With a final, swift motion, Lakota used his whip to entangle the leader's hoverhorse. Sparks flew, and the vehicle ground to a halt. The leader cursed, trying to free it, but it was no use. Lakota advanced, keeping calm and careful. "Leave her," Lakota said. "End this now." The leader's pride battled with his fear. He looked at Lena at the plateau and finally at Lakota. He saw no weakness, no hesitation. Slowly, he lowered his weapon. His men followed. The fight was over. Lena exhaled, relief washing over her. She had survived the mercenaries, learned courage, and witnessed Lakota's skill and honor. The plateau was quiet now, except for the wind and the distant hum of the desert. The dust settled, carrying away the tension and fear of the battle. Lakota approached Lena, carefully untangling the ropes from her wrists once more. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No," she replied, shaking slightly. "Just tired," he nodded. "Good, we must move quickly. The desert is still dangerous. Even victory can be temporary." They rode together toward the canyon exit, leaving the mercenaries trapped behind. Lena's horse followed Lakota closely, trusting him completely. The twin suns had set, and the sky was a deep violet, scattered with stars. The desert was silent, peaceful for the first time that day. Lena looked at Lakota. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. Lakota shook his head. "No thanks needed. You were brave, too. Courage matters more than gratitude in places like this." They moved quietly, the desert stretching endlessly before them. The air was cooler now, the dust settling into the cracks of the rocky plains. Lena realized how much she had learned in these few hours: patience, observation, courage, and trust. She had faced fear and survived, and she had formed a bond with someone who understood the desert and the dangers it held. As they reached the plateau's edge, they looked down at the outpost in the distance. Small lights flickered in the settlement, welcoming them home. Lena felt a wave of relief and hope. She had survived the mercenaries, and she had learned that even in the harshest desert, courage and skill could make a difference. Lakota guided the horses carefully down a narrow trail, avoiding loose rocks and sharp edges. Lena followed closely, her trust in him complete. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the scent of the desert and the faint glow of alien plants. Finally, they reached the outpost. Settlers came out, surprised and relieved to see them. Some ran toward Lena, checking her for injuries. Others looked at Lakota with respect, knowing he had saved another life in the harsh frontier of Red Mesa. Lena dismounted, her legs weak but steady. She turned to Lakota. I couldn't have survived without you," she said. Lakota smiled faintly, humble. "You survived because you were brave. I only guided the way, remember that. Courage comes from within." The settlers led Lena inside the outpost, offering water, food, and comfort. She felt the warmth of safety for the first time in hours. The battle was over, and the desert, though still dangerous, had not claimed her. Lakota stayed outside for a moment, looking at the stars above Red Mesa. He thought of the dangers that still roamed the plains and the lessons the desert had taught him. Then, with a quiet determination, he mounted his horse and rode toward the cliffs, disappearing into the shadows. Lena watched him go, understanding that this was the way of the frontier. Heroes did not always stay. They appeared when needed, protected the innocent, and vanished again, leaving courage and hope behind. Inside the outpost, Lena sat by the fire, feeling the heat on her face and listening to the wind outside. She thought of Lakota, the canyon, and the plateau. She had survived. She had learned bravery, patience, and trust, and she knew that Red Mesa, with all its danger and beauty, had changed her forever. The desert was quiet now, the dust settled, and the plains stretched endlessly under the stars. Lena closed her eyes, breathing deeply. She had faced fear and survived. She had seen courage in action and learned the strength of her own heart. Tomorrow, the desert would be as harsh as ever, but tonight she could rest. The battle was won, the mercenaries defeated, and a new sense of hope had taken root. Lena had survived Red Mesa, and she would never forget the lessons learned, the courage found, and the Lakota ranger who had stood in the dust to protect her. The desert whispered its secrets in the night, carrying the story of bravery, hope, and survival across the plains. Lena knew this was only the beginning. Red Mesa had many more challenges, but she was ready. She had survived, and she had learned what it meant to be truly brave.